Lazybones. The town of Lark is a carefully planned community, nestled away in a cluster of verdant foothills. Franklin Park forms the geographic, not to mention philosophical, center of Lark. In the midst of Franklin Park resides a larger-than-life statue of Ben Franklin. The famous founding father and learned scribe stands upon a granite plinth, on which is inscribed one of his most celebrated aphorisms. Early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. The rest of the community radiates outward like the spokes of a wheel, or more appropriately for this particular town, like the hands of a great clock. The people of Larkers, love clocks and watches. Lark is a town chock full and overflowing with morning people. In Lark, the good citizens arise early. Most Larkers spring from their beds around 5:30, but many arise by 5 or even 4:30. They say the mayor gets up every single morning at 4 and does 100 push-ups before breakfast. The mayor's been up for hours, Larkers often say. That's probably why he's the mayor. Larkers love their pithy sayings, and they have a plethora of them. They love to bound from their beds at ungodly hours, chirping, "Oh, I just love mornings, don't you? Oh, yes, darling, it's so good to be up early like this, so we can watch the sunrise. Sunrise in for another hour. Come, let's get some coffee brewing." Larkers love coffee. And yes, Larkers are a generally chipper lot. In the morning, at least. The town of Lark has a secret. A few citizens sleep in till 6 o'clock, or even 6:30. These are the Lazybones. Can't get anything done lying around in bed till all hours, the other citizens like to chide the Lazybones. The most notorious Lazybones Lark ever knew was Larry. Lazy Larry, his friends used to call him. Can't get anything done lying around in bed all day, lazy. Why, look at the time, the mayor's been up for hours. You know, I just love mornings. Even the cats and dogs get up early in the town of Lark. Larry used to tell his friends, "But I stay up late working on my art." To which they would retort with another of their pithy sayings, "No honest work is ever done at night." Conversations in Lark often go something like this. "So, what time do you get up?" Right around 5 o'clock. Any later and I just wouldn't feel right. Plus, my cat would wonder what was wrong with me." "How about you?" "Oh, I also get up at 5, except of course on weekends. Then I get up at 4:30. There are no night shifts in Lark. You might be wondering, but what about hospitals? What about ambulances? To which Larkers would answer with yet another pithy saying, "Heart attacks can wait till morning." But what, you might ask, about accidents? What if somebody gets hurt during the night? Larker would only look at you, maybe roll his or her eyes and ask in a vaguely accusatory voice, what would they be doing up and about in the middle of the night? No honest work is ever done at night. Take an evening stroll down a street in Lark, and you will see house lights shut off by 9 or 10. By 11, most homes are dark, their occupants snug in bed and drifting off to sleep in sweet anticipation of another morning. Stroll down a street at midnight, and it's like walking through a ghost town. Dark, quiet. Your footfalls echoing up and down desolate avenues. You will hear no music, no voices, no closing doors, no barking dogs. Most likely nobody will even notice you. But If somebody does happen to peek outside and spy you ambling down the street at such an hour, you will be viewed with suspicion. What's he doing out there at this hour? The viewer might mutter to himself. I'd call Sheriff Parker, but I'm sure he's asleep by now. Good man, the sheriff. Gets up almost as early as the mayor. Larry enjoyed walking at night. It was like having the town to himself. Eyes peeked at him through the slats of Venetian blinds as he strolled down street after street, letting his mind wander. Often he came home after 11, and his wife, Nancy, would wonder where he went off to at all hours of the night. Walking, he'd tell her. Well, you'd better come to bed. It's late. And yet, Larry would usually step into his studio, set up a fresh canvas on the easel, and call out, "Be with you in a bit, love. Just got some work to do first." Nancy would run off to bed, muttering, "No honest work is ever done at night." Larry might paint until midnight, or even half past, before forcing himself to set down the brush and wrap up for the night. He would paint what he saw during his walks. Deserted streets, dark houses, raccoons tumbling from garbage cans. Somehow, everything would come out dark and surreal. In one, a single light in a single house is still on, and a woman's hand can be seen reaching for the switch. Other scenes would be downright sinister, as if the bleak houses were gazing out from the canvas. No honest work is ever done at night, he had heard larkers say so often. So be it, he decided. Then I will paint lies and half-truths, or I will paint the truths that nobody bothers to see. I will paint the world that nobody sees, nobody but me. I will paint the night and all its secrets. After painting, Larry would always want to wake Nancy and show her what he had created. But it would be too late. She gets up so early, he'd have to remind himself. One night, he didn't finish painting until well after 1. By the time he put away his paints and showered, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. Felt almost sinful being up so late. The mayor will be up in 2 hours, he whispered to himself on this night. He was still wide awake, energized from the painting. He slipped quietly into bed. Even so, Nancy roused enough to say, "Larry, what time is it?" On this night, Larry had somehow captured the very silence of the streets. He had tapped into something deep within himself and mixed that something with the paints and applied it to canvas with dabs and swirls, his heart still hammered. He kissed the back of Nancy's neck and slid one hand down her thigh. "What are you doing?" It had been weeks since they last made love. "Larry, what time is it?" The people of Lark always want to know what time it is. Larry ran his hand up the smooth skin of her body, took up a full, heavy breast. Nancy removed his hand and placed it over on his side of the bed. "It's late. We have to get up soon." "We could sleep in." Nancy turned and glared at Larry as if he were a notorious puppy killer. Then she rolled over and fell promptly back to sleep. Nancy arose every morning at 4:30. Actually, she usually got up a few minutes before, so that when the alarm went off, she'd be off in another part of the house. Larry worked in the factory that made the alarm clock, the Lark Clock Company. On this morning, Larry tried covering his head with a pillow to blot out the alarm. It was no use. Alarm clocks manufactured at the Lark Clock Company were scientifically designed to rouse even the worst sluggard. Besides the alarm, he could hear Nancy in the kitchen, closing cupboard doors a little harder than was necessary. frying pan came smack down on a burner. A coffee cup impacted a countertop. A few moments later, Nancy's footfalls came stomping down the hallway. Larry fought to untangle himself from the bedclothes. As he searched the darkness for the alarm clock, Nancy stepped into the bedroom and snapped, "I got it! Don't bother to get up. I know you like to sleep in."
I'm all ready.
Her hand reached the alarm clock a second before his. "Want me to reset it for you?" Nancy snarled. "So you can go back to sleep?"
I'll do it.
Nancy stalked off. Larry set the alarm from 4:30 to 6 o'clock. Then, an idea hit him. A heretical idea. He set the alarm for 6:30 and wrapped the bedclothes around himself like a cocoon. Nancy was back in the kitchen. Then she was on the phone saying, "Running late? Yeah, Larry's still in bed. I know. What can you do?" Larry knew he wasn't going to get back to sleep before the alarm went off again. Still, he liked to just lie in bed. Laze about was the Larker term. And think. This morning his mind drifted back to his childhood. He grew up in a city far away from Lark, but his parents were rabid morning people who would have been right at home in this odd town. Every Saturday morning his mother knocked on his bedroom door, calling, "You up?"
No, not yet.
He'd call back.
Soon.
A few minutes later his father would invariably knock. "Mind if I come in, son?" "Oh, you're still in bed. Never mind." "You feeling okay? Are you sick? Maybe we should call the doctor. I'm sure he must be up by now." If he was still in bed at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning, heaven forbid, the big guns would come out. The roar of the vacuum cleaner would start in the living room, but quickly make its way to the little patch of carpet just outside Larry's bedroom. Then the old steel beast would go bang, bang, bang against his bedroom door. He'd click on his bedside light. The vacuum cleaner would roar endlessly. That little patch of carpet outside his bedroom was vacuumed more than the entire rest of the house, so that the wheels had worn grooves into the floor. Larry would finally surrender and open his door to the invader. Then his mother would tap the on-off switch with her toe, and the beast would settle, a process that took several seconds, while Larry stood by with his head full of unfinished dreams. His mother's line at this point would be, "Oh, I'm sorry, Larry. Did I wake you?" That's what Larry thought about on this morning, when he rebelliously set his alarm for 6:30 a.m. That and the masterpiece he had created the night before. While he lazed about, Nancy went stomp, crash, bang through the house. Throughout the town of Lark, citizens drank strong coffee and checked their watches and drove to work. The sun rose and birds twittered, and Lark citizens greeted each other, also twittering, "Good morning." Yes, it is. Don't you just love mornings? Yes, I do. Larry yawned, stretched, and rolled over. At 5:20, Nancy stepped into the bedroom. She gazed down upon Larry. She gazed at the glowing red numbers of the Lark Company alarm clock, then heaved a great sigh and stepped out. Seconds later, Larry heard her key turn in the front door lock, and at last, he was alone in the house. At 5 minutes till 7, Larry stepped through the security door of the Lark Clock Company. Motto, industrious clocks for industrious people. Lark clocks were distributed throughout the world. "Just getting in?" Larry's friend Aaron asked. "Shift doesn't start till 7. "Yeah, ridiculously late, I know. We've all been here since at least 6. Good to get a jump on things, have some coffee, walk around." Larry grabbed his security badge and stepped over the line leading to the time clock. The time clock was, of course, manufactured there at Lark Clock Company. A picture of Ben Franklin was posted on the wall above it. A voice synthesizer had Ben spouting his well-worn aphorisms. "He that rises late must trot all day." And, "It is easier to prevent bad habits than to break them." The line began moving as Larry's fellow employees punched in, greeting Ben Franklin as they did so. "Morning, Ben. The early bird gets the worm, eh, Ben?" Ben advised Karen from accounting, "Energy and persistence conquer all things." Karen punched her card and chirped, "Right you are, Ben. Right you are." Larry stuck his badge in the slot. The time clock accompanied his punch. Ben said, "Time is money." Larry muttered, "Screw you, Ben," and headed off to his workstation. What Larry did at the Lark Clock Company felt so disconnected from what he considered his real life that he simply went through the motions until it was over for another day. He pieced together the plastic parts of alarm clocks. He soldered electrical wires to the internal mechanisms of wall clocks. He took inventory at the loading docks. He went where he was told and did what he was told and dreamed of a world without clocks, or sometimes of a world in which clocks melted, like those in that Salvador Dali painting, The Persistence of Memory. The town of Lark was in love with clocks. Larry hated clocks. He wasn't too fond of Ben Franklin either. When his shift was over, Larry went home and took a nap. In Lark, a person who sleeps in till 6 is a lazybones. Someone who takes an afternoon nap is a sluggard. Larry didn't care. Nancy wasn't home. She was probably out having coffee with friends. Larry didn't expect to fall asleep. He just wanted to rest his eyes, zone out for a bit before getting up for another long evening walk. He yawned, stretched, and awoke to an immense roar. Nancy was vacuuming the bedroom floor. Vacuum cleaner could have been a clone of the one his mother used all those years ago. It roared and it swallowed cracker crumbs. Nancy crashed the damn thing against the bed, lowered the handle so as to shove the monster underneath where it choked on something. Loose change, perhaps? And so the fan belt was forced to stop while the drive spindle kept spinning until the noxious burnt rubber smell assaulted Larry's nose, while the motor whined at a higher and higher pitch until he had to clamp his hands over his ears or go deaf. Nancy toed the on-off switch, and the choking monster settled down. "I'm sorry, dear. Did I wake you?" He set out walking after supper. This time he took a sketch pad and charcoal sticks in a backpack. Along the way, he made a mental list of things he really didn't like. 1, clocks and watches. 2, Ben Franklin. And 3, vacuum cleaners. The sun was still up. Larry contemplated adding that to the list, but ultimately decided against it. He headed away from the residential section of Lark. By the time he reached downtown, it was after 7. The sun was setting and most of the stores had already closed. Restaurants were locking up for the night. Larry came to a bar called La Noche. A sign proclaimed, "Fridays and Saturdays open until 10 p.m. It was only Thursday, which meant it closed at 9. Larry stepped in. About a dozen patrons milled about. A small group was leaving, and Larry overheard a man chuckle, "Yeah, I better get on home. Gotta get up early tomorrow." A pretty waitress took his beer order while he unloaded his backpack at a table. The sun finished setting and the place dimmed. Larry found the change pleasant, but the rest of the patrons seemed bothered. Larry thought, it's like they're the polar opposite of vampires. They checked their watches compulsively and chattered about bedtimes and mornings. Number 4 on the list of things I really don't like, mornings. How he had omitted that one in the first place, he wasn't sure. He began to draw. His waitress came by again. Her name tag said Bianca.
"You haven't touched your beer,"
said Bianca. Larry took a sip, and Bianca gave a slightly flirtatious smile.
"You're an artist,"
she said.
"Can I see?"
Larry flipped the pages of his sketch pad and showed her a drawing he'd made after midnight one Friday. He'd drawn his own neighborhood, yet it looked positively alien. He expected her to glance briefly and say something like, "Oh yeah, nice." But she leaned over, studied it carefully. Her hair brushed against his face and he felt a tingle of excitement. He counted 9 eye blinks before she straightened back up. Her smile melted. Larry waited expectantly for some sort of critique. None came. Instead, she walked to the bar, shedding her apron as she went. The bartender looked at her, puzzled.
"Sorry, Lou. I can't work here anymore."
"What the hell?" Bianca all but ran for the door. Later, past 9 o'clock, and downtown Lark was closed up tight. Larry sat on a bench across from La Noche and watched Lou, the bartender, climb into a Mazda and drive off. Around 10 o'clock, the bats came out. They fluttered about the trees and dove through alleys in pursuit of tiny insects. Larry watched and sketched, watched some more. Nobody else was around to see him. He had them all to himself. They flew only for him. He felt like a billionaire. He felt like a king. Rain smudged his sketch pad. Only when he looked up, he realized the rain was pouring from his eyes. He couldn't stop raining, he couldn't stop sketching, and he wanted to stay up all night, walking and drawing. I am the king of the night. He would be a magnanimous king. He would sketch the bats and share them with the daylight people. "This is the world you never see," he would tell them. "It is your own world, but you don't see it, for your eyes are closed." He took off his watch, dropped it to the sidewalk, and stomped it to pieces. He'd left his cell phone at home, and so now had no way of telling what time it was. A long time later, he really had to take a leak, but nothing was open. And yet, it wasn't like anybody was around. He grinned and started walking. Didn't take him long to reach his destination, the Ben Franklin statue, centerpiece of Lark. Larry looked about at the abandoned park. He stepped up to the plinth and read, "Early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise." Larry unzipped, aimed, and let loose with a long, steady stream, all over Ben's words of wisdom. From the other side of the park came the sound of clapping hands. Larry turned his head toward the sound, but couldn't stop pissing, not in midstream. Somebody giggled. Larry concluded his business, tucked himself away, and zipped back up. A moment later, Bianca walked up to him.
"Bravo! Piss on old Ben, bravo!"
"It's you.
"It's me."
Why did you quit your job like that?"
"Oh, why does anybody do anything? Why do people quit jobs? Why do people pee on monuments of great men?"
Did something about my drawing upset you?"
"Look at this place. Fucking ghost town. You from around here? Originally, I mean?"
"No."
"Course you aren't. Me either. Nobody is from Lark. And nobody really knows why they moved to this stupid little town. But but I know. It makes sense now, and I'm getting the hell out of here.
Bianca started walking away. Larry called to her, but she kept walking.
Go home. It's getting late. Go home and pack your bags and get out of here while you still can.
She broke into a run and was out of sight moments later. On the way home, he sat down on a bench, using his backpack as a pillow. He fell into that slumbering twilight zone between consciousness and sleep. The bats still fluttered about in his mind. He expected somebody to come along and ask why he was napping on a bench in the middle of the night. But nobody did. In an automatic gesture, he looked at the back of his wrist, but it no longer told him the time. Tendrils of panic poked about in his brain until he roused himself from the bench and continued his trek home. Without his watch, he felt both naked and free. He envisioned a police officer accosting him and demanding, "Sir, where is your watch?" He giggled, giddy with exhaustion. Fumbling with his front door lock, images of the night tumbled through his mind. The bats fluttering, Bianca looking at his sketch, his stream of piss landing on Ben Franklin's feet. He wondered if Nancy was up waiting for him, wondering where the hell he was all night. He pushed through the door and shut it quietly behind him, and found himself thinking, just like every other larger, what time is it? How long before it's time to get up? What time is it? Tiptoe, 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 he went through the house. Oddly, just as he once again wondered what the hell time it was, the answer came screeching at him. He dashed for the bedroom. Nancy was just jumping up from bed. It was unusual, but not unheard of, for her to wait until the alarm sounded before getting up. Now she was making her way to the snooze button. But Larry's hand beat her to it. She looked up at him.
What?
She said.
You're already dressed?
Been up for some time, he said, nonchalant as you please. Their hands clasped on top of the alarm clock.
Take your clothes off. It's still early. We have time for a quickie.
Larry arrived at Lark Clock Company a half hour before his shift, feeling as if a foot of foam rubber separated himself from the rest of the world. He hadn't slept at all during the night. He considered going back to bed after Nancy left the house. Just crawl back under the covers and called in sick for the day, but then what would he do? Stay up all night again, walking and drawing? He'd be out of job pretty quick that way. I could tend bar, he thought. Go see if Lou would hire me. Except there wasn't exactly a vibrant nightlife in Lark. The few bars in Lark were dreary, soulless places. He thought of the sketch he had shown Bianca and how she had bolted. What the hell had spooked her? He was stuck with Lark Clock Company. He went through the usual motions. Sometime before lunch, a fellow employee came by with a clipboard. "What's this?" Larry asked. "It's a petition," said the other employee. Bill, according to his name patch, to get the plant to start the shift earlier, 6 o'clock instead of 7. Everybody's signing it, of course. Larry signed the damn thing just to get rid of Bill. They were dragging him off to be judged by the mayor. The offense was too serious to be presided over by a mere judge. Lazybones! Lazybones! The crowd chanted. They bound him in chains and brought him before the great doors of a palatial mansion, the mayor's house. They stood him before a massive judge's bench from which the mayor peered down upon him with utter contempt. A bailiff unrolled a scroll on which were scribed his crimes. Sleeping in till all hours, lazing about, public urination, disrespecting Ben Franklin. The scroll unrolled some more, revealing yet more sins. Wandering the streets at night, vagrancy. The mayor brought his gavel down upon the bench, and the sound was like thunder. Larry awoke with a start, not sure where he was, or even worse, what time it was. He was hidden among the shipping boxes in the warehouse where he had sat down to rest his eyes. He didn't know how long he'd been asleep, but felt oddly refreshed. He gulped some air, rubbed his eyes, and stepped briskly back out to the floor and resumed work. A few minutes later, the end-of-day buzzer went off. Larry said, "Happy Friday, Ben," and punched out with a smile. When he got home, he took a look at the sketch he had shown Bianca. My God. It can't be. He'd drawn his house and his neighbors' houses. All the inside lights were off. The streetlights cast eerie shadows. A raccoon was sniffing around a trash can by the curb. In the middle of the street hovered a dark splotch. He didn't remember drawing it, but he knew what it was, and his scalp tingled when he looked at it. He forced himself to nap before setting out, then walked back to La Noche. He arrived at 7 and the place was almost full. Lou was running around, taking orders and grumbling. Larry sat at the only empty table. When Lou came by, Larry ordered a beer and said, "I'm looking for Bianca." "Girl left me in the lurch. You want to see her? Wait around a bit. She'll be by to pick up her last check." Larry drank beer. He felt naked without his sketch pad. After about an hour, Bianca stepped in. Larry called to her, motioned her over. "Come, sit with me." She stood by his table, looking at him.
You know about the holes, don't you?
Larry's skin prickled. I didn't realize I had drawn one. I hadn't thought about a hole since I was a kid.
Nobody does. I'm guessing you thought it was a family thing? A story that only your own weird family told?
Yes. She sat.
Nobody talks about them. I'm from Colorado Springs and grew up hearing about the holes. My friends thought I was crazy when I talked to them, but here, everybody knows. They change the subject real fast when you talk about them, but they know what they are. Where are you from?
Kalamazoo.
And your family had a sort of legend, didn't they? About the holes?
Yes.
I don't even know your name, and yet I know that about you. Isn't that something?
My name is Larry.
Well, Larry, I started to think the holes weren't real. Then you showed me one in your drawing. Tell me what you know about them.
It had been years since Larry had really thought about the holes. Now, though, it came flooding back. It was my dad who told the story. He said the holes appeared between midnight and 3 in the morning. Not everybody was in danger, but we were, for some reason. Our family. You step out the door between midnight and 3 and you could slip through a hole, disappear forever. But that wasn't the worst part. Once you slip through,
people start to forget about you.
Larry took a long drink of beer. He looked around the bar for holes, but it was still too early. Plus, they were safe inside. Yes, they start to forget. A sort of confusion sets in. Nobody really looks or even cares. The hole closes up and then you can't even remember the person's face anymore. Nobody else remembers. I had a little sister. At least I think I did. I need another beer for this. Bianca waved to Lou. Lou glared but strode over. Larry ordered beers for them both, and Lou stalked back to the bar without a word.
Never mind him. Go on. You had a sister?
I was maybe 9, and she was 6. She liked to slip outside to the porch at night. Then, one day, I didn't have a sister anymore. My folks threw all her stuff into the trash like it was nothing, and never said a word about her. They forgot about her, and so did I.
You remember her now?
The memories came back to me when I was older. But it was like remembering some old TV show. I tried to talk to my folks about her once, but my dad stomped out the door, and my mother got upset and changed the subject real fast, and that was that. I was young when she disappeared. Maybe she was just some silly imaginary friend. Who knows, maybe all those stories about the holes got to me, so I made up my own yarn and then believed it. Memory is a funny thing, isn't it? Somebody once said that memory is an artist, not an historian.
She was real and she slipped through a hole. You know it's true, so stop trying to bullshit me, okay?
I guess.
You're afraid, Larry. That's what it comes down to. Everyone here in Lark is afraid. We're all just running away from the holes. We tell ourselves how much we love getting up at the crack of dawn, but that's all bullshit. We don't love mornings. We're scared shitless of the night. So we move here where everybody's a morning person. Why the hell else would anybody come here? What do you do for a living, Larry?
I work at the clock factory.
I bet you didn't move here to screw together widgets. You came here to get away. Whether you know it or not. People who see the holes always end up with other people who see the holes. They come here and the holes follow them. This town is infested with them.
I go walking at night.
Aren't you afraid of the holes?
I hadn't even thought of them. Until I took another look at the sketch I made. I didn't even know I had drawn it. I must have forgotten about it as soon as it closed up.
That's the way it works, isn't it? Part of us knows that these things, these holes, are stalking us, and everybody we love, but we go on like nothing's happening. Because who wants to think about that shit? Plus, the holes themselves chomp on our memories like Snickers bars the moment they get swallowed up. So yeah, our memories get all tucked away in dark corners, and we tell ourselves everything's fucking peachy and move to some stupid-ass town where everybody leaps out of bed like the Energizer Bunny at ridiculous hours and is tucked back in by the time the holes come out to play.
I hate this town. Except for the nights, then I have the whole place to myself. The holes be damned. I love to wander around at night. This place is like a ghost town after 11.
Everybody tucked away in bed, all safe and sound. Will you get drunk with me tonight?
I have a wife. I shouldn't.
I don't care about your wife. I have a husband. Screw them. Screw them both. I want to stay up all night. I'm so tired of running, scared. Get drunk with me, Larry. Stay up with me tonight. Keep me company. Make sure I don't go staggering off into a hole, and I'll do the same for you.
They ordered burgers and mixed drinks. They sat and drank and talked right up till 10 o'clock, closing time. Lou came by and gave Bianca her final paycheck. Larry and Bianca set out, walking together.
Look at it. Look at how the house lights go off one after another. Scared little bunnies. Are you drunk, Larry?
I am very drunk.
So am I. Let's hold each other up. Put your arm around me. We can walk around all drunk and stupid. Doesn't matter in this ridiculous town because nobody will stop us. Nobody else is up.
They walked back to the town square.
It's almost midnight, and everybody is snug in bed all over town. We can do anything we want. There's something I've wanted to do for a long time.
She pulled away from Larry and stripped off her blouse. What are you doing? She unclasped her bra and tossed it on the ground. Larry looked away, but not before getting a good look at her small, dark, pert breasts. When he looked back, she kicked off her shoes. One almost hit Larry in the face. She stripped out of her jeans and tossed them aside, then slipped off her panties. Standing naked, she turned and wiggled her ass at Larry.
I'm free.
Hey!
Oh, don't get all righteous on me, Mr. Piss on Ben Franklin.
Bianca danced in the moonlight.
Don't worry, nobody's around to see. Let's walk some more.
You're going to get a chill.
You'll keep me warm. We can do whatever we want. No cops, no nobody. We could go over to your place and fuck on your front lawn. Nobody would suspect a thing. Your little wife would go on sleeping like a baby.
Bianca danced away. Hey! Wait up! Larry scooped up her clothes, but when he looked back up, Bianca was gone. He called out for her. His voice echoed back to him. Not far away, a splotch of darkness closed up. Larry screamed, "Bianca! Bianca!" From behind him, Bianca giggled and stepped out of the shadows.
Oh my God.
You gave me a scare. Larry bundled her clothes so as to carry him with one hand. They wrapped their arms around each other and walked. Her naked skin was smooth beneath his hand. Her body so very warm. This isn't right, he said. But Bianca only snuggled closer. I love my wife.
That's nice. What's her name?
Instead of answering, he dropped her clothes and pulled her in for a hug. His heart thundered, and it took all his willpower to end the embrace. But he did. He walked Bianca to her house. The streets were creepy and silent, but he didn't see any holes. That or he simply forgot about them once they closed up.
Home safe and sound. But will you be okay? Will you make it home without wandering into a hole?
I'll be careful. You should get inside. You're naked. And your husband's inside.
Hubby's fast asleep. Make a good little larker. Me and you could fuck in the middle of the street, and nobody would be the wiser. But I suppose you should get home to your wife.
Larry kissed her under the porch light, handed over her clothes, and watched her slip inside. Setting off for home, he mumbled, "Wife?" He slipped inside his house, found a note.
Where the hell were you tonight? I woke up and you still weren't home, so I went out looking for you. Nancy.
Larry collapsed on the living room couch and tried to make sense of his swirling thoughts. Nancy. He wadded up the note, threw it away. He stumbled into the bedroom and passed out cold. A couple hours later, the alarm clock went off. Larry jumped right up and shut it off. He brewed himself a pot of coffee and fried up some eggs. Over breakfast, he thought about how nice it would be to have a wife to wake up next to. On the counter sat a framed picture of himself with a very pretty woman. They had their arms around one another and looked very happy. He chucked the thing into the trash bin and went back to nibbling his bacon. He poured himself a second cup of coffee. It was still early, so he had time to savor the coffee and enjoy the morning. Morning was, after all, the best time of the day.